Hi, my name is Jeremy, client number 748. This is my wife, Chelsea. My story, I feel like, starts off early on as a child. I experienced some, hurt and frustrations as a child, having been raised by my stepfather. So I feel like, that was, kind of where my, pain came from, if you will. It stemmed from what I feel like my addiction started from, is the lack of affection from my stepfather. I acted out. I got in trouble in school, disobeyed constantly in the principal's office, getting in trouble, different reasons at school. And that continued to progress. And after, my mom and stepfather divorce, continued to progress. And my mom, my uncle, and my grandma, I collectively called my parents at this particular time in my age. They're the ones that made a decision for me as to what direction my life was going to go. And they felt it important to intervene and make a decision to try to get some structure in my life, and elected to send me to military school. Pretty intense, especially for someone that was 14 years old in 8th grade that kind of been babied most of their life. So I went through that for a few years, and I'll tell you, it was a good structure for me. It was a really good structure for me. It gave me that sense of direction and the structure and accountability that I needed, that I didn't get from my mom as a single parent. She had her hands full, particularly with me, because I disobeyed and got a lot of trouble. The first year went real well. This particular school was co-ed, so you throw in the mix with women, and that kind of got me derailed from all the good progress I was making, and got myself hung up in some situations that really just derailed my progress. By the time in the middle of my junior year, I had convinced my parents to let me come home. So they let me come home, and I pled with them to let me go back, and they like, if you go home, this is it, kind of deal. So I wanted to come home and be with my friends. When I got home, different story. My friends were all very engaged in going out and hanging out at parties and friends' houses and drinking and smoking weed, and it's like I didn't skip a beat, just dove right in. I got myself in some trouble with the law, possession of marijuana and intent to distribute even, and I had just turned 18 years old. And so I got sent to jail. Oxycontin is the name of this drug that kind of took me by storm. Really grabbed a hold of me. The other stuff I just experimented with, it was this like kind of party stuff, if you will, but it was Oxycontin that really took grab upon my life. This is about 23 years old, and for the most part, I somehow managed to get through a good portion of school. I did okay in school and worked occasionally when I needed to, and was able to pay my bills, with obviously the illegal activities, and then also a little bit of working. But 23 years old is when this thing took grasp of my life. About 26 years old, I meet this lovely lady and take her down with me, and it wasn't long after meeting her, I had her, doing Oxycontin. So I don't know, a year into our relationship, she ends up pregnant. And, we get our parents involved in the situation, like, hey, listen, this is kind of where we are. There were times of, cry for help. There's definitely times that we're like, oh my gosh, what are we doing? We need help. And we tried Suboxone, a bit of a Band-Aid, if you will. It helped with the process, while she was pregnant. And so in 2008, we introduced our first child into this world, Skylar. He's now 16 years old. This is kind of where things really, take a big fall, for us. We literally, right?
Yeah.
So we have, our first kid, and at this time we're living at her family's house. We got a large sum of money, and from our income tax money, and we elected to go purchase a bunch of pills. And we had some periods of time where we had some absences of opiates in our system, and when we got these pills, we kind of picked up where we left off from before, and it was a jolt, and I ended up ODing and having an episode to where it led me to going to a window, and this is not anything that I was aware of, but this is a 3-story house, and I go to a window, and I jump out of this window, and I can't to this day understand why or how or anything about that night, because I was completely unaware of what was going on.
I just remember holding on to your hand like as you were jumping and thinking that this is the last time I'm going to see this man alive. He is never going to see our son grow up. He is going to miss the first of many things, and I just kept thinking, okay, I can't let him go. And I had such a tight grip, and I remember you slipping and thinking that this is going to be the end. And I mean, we hung on, and it ended up ripping your finger, and you have the scar there now. And I just remember you dropping to the ground, and my 12-year-old niece was on the first floor, and she just happened to see you hit the ground, and I just remember her screaming, and so I just kept thinking, okay, now he's probably dead, and but now I've got to clean up the mess, and I cannot let because this isn't the first time or the second time he's overdosed, and so by this time I kind of knew what was coming, so I had to make sure that what we had purchased earlier was not confiscated by the police. And it turns out that he lived through this, and they had rushed him off to the ICU. I was left back at home dealing with the police department. So they were wanting to charge me with attempted murder because they thought that I had pushed him out of this window and nearly took his life. And eventually they figured out that I could not physically lift him and put him in this window and push him out, so that quickly dissolved.
So yeah, I mean, 3 weeks in ICU and in the hospital, and I fell, straight all the way down on the ground. I was long ways, landing on my face, lots of fractures in my face. My whole entire skull was fractured.
Picture a bulldog and their face flattened in and out, and that's exactly what he looked like. And I remember the doctor coming in and telling you that you would never look the same, and just seeing those tears roll down your face, and I did not know how to help him.
3-4 weeks I was in the hospital, and I get out of the hospital, and it's like, okay, what are we doing? Where are you going? And short period of time after I got out of the hospital, it was like, okay, we've got to do something. So I did go into Valley Hope. I went through a little bit of the process, but I just wasn't ready. It didn't take. I was not ready. I got out. Her mom was trying to desperately get her away from me. I was killing her daughter, and she got her into Valley Hope in
Grapevine, Texas.
Grapevine, Texas. So she went there. We're separated, and I'm like, okay, as soon as she gets out, we'll just pick right back up where we left off. It wasn't long. 2-3 months after, I was able to convince her to let me come pick her up, and it's like we didn't miss a beat. We just right back at it, staying in hotels, and shortly after that, she ended up getting pregnant again, and now we've got our second child, Caden. The first of which, Skylar, he was given up to her mom.
So while we were in treatment, Child Protective Services was knocking on our door trying to serve or investigate, but we had already signed over temporary guardianship to my mother.
2 years old, I guess, was whenever we ended up losing him, and that was that was a little bit different of a deal. We got ourselves in some trouble, and we left him behind at a place that we were staying at. Cops pulled up behind us, in just a beat down car, no insurance, no driver's license, and we're going to jail, right? Oh, by the way, hey, our quote unquote babysitters needing to leave, we need to go get our kid. They saw, what was going on. They read between the lines, and they went to the place where we're staying at and found the baby alone. Caden, found him alone. And shortly after, we went to jail that night, and then we got out, and shortly after, we got charged with child neglect. A little bit more involvement with the state on this one, but again, her mom steps in.
Always that thought of, okay, we're gonna get sober tomorrow, and but then once the withdrawals kick in, you're like, okay, let's do it tomorrow, you know. And it just when you just start feeling like crap, and you just you know one thing that could just take it all away and make you feel normal, like you can actually make it through the day, it's so easily to say, oh, okay, let's do it tomorrow. Next time they pulled us over, and I remember he was driving, and we just left our hotel room, and he saw the lights turn on, and he hands me a bottle of pills and says, do something with this. And as the obedient girlfriend that I am, I proceeded to take care of it. And next thing I know, I have a cop knocking on my window saying, get out of the car. And you know, when you see two cop cars show up, you are done. You are going to jail.
We went to jail that day, but you know, we got some mailers in the mail, and Gary Higginbotham's pretty little face was on one of these mailers, and we call this attorney, and we meet him at court one day, and he says, "Oh my gosh, you guys, you guys need some help." And we're coming in there, our eyes are half shut, probably drooling a little bit, slurring, all the things, all the signs are there.
But at the same time thinking that we are acting very normal,
yeah,
okay?
And we weren't.
Nobody can spot this.
And we weren't. So he helps us through this process, and during this process, he says, "I think it would be important for you to meet somebody," and he introduced us to Kent Bowles. Kent Bowles met with us for all of at least 6 months or more at the Brahms I think it was Monday, downtown, off at Classen, 16th and Classen maybe. I think it was every Monday. At this particular time, we had all of the things going through our system. When he met with us, he was like, listen, you guys are a mess, and this is going to take some time. It's going to be a process. We need you to come off the methadone. We need you to try to lower some of the doses of medication that you're taking, and this is going to be a process. It's going to be a commitment for you. But in return, I'm going to show you the road that's going to give you a new life. December 16, 2015, that was it. I went into TRC, and Kent wanted, for me to have some skin in the game. He wanted me to show that my level of commitment. What's that look like? We want you to have X amount of days before we're going to help out and contribute. I came into Rob's Ranch on a scholarship. See Ken at the end of the hall, and I got my stuff, and everyone's like, "Oh, you're going to Rob's Ranch?" I'm like, "Yeah, I'm going to Rob's Ranch." Like it's, like it's the Super Bowl of rehabs. So I get in the car with Kent, and we drive, and it's a long drive, 30, 45 minutes to Purcell, Oklahoma. And I remember, crossing through the gates. And I tell you, I've done this 150 times to this day. Crossing through those gates, I have the exact same feeling as I do every single time, regardless of how many times I've been here. And I just have this sense of, peace, and know that everything's going to be okay.
I get it, and I didn't even go to treatment here.
I go to the classes, and I'm quiet, I'm reserved, I'm just kind of keeping to myself and doing all the different things. And I spend 90 days here. The food's fantastic, so I was able to gain a couple pounds, and my counselor Dennis would meet with me and have goals and try to get the family kind of thing going back on together. Meanwhile, she's getting herself checked in. Here we are doing our own thing, together but separate, right? And
keyword separate.
Somehow we made it out on the other side. We went to sober living. we're in sober living for 2 years after I transitioned from Rob's Ranch. She transitioned out of a community house. I needed that accountability. I needed that structure to have that foundation. And so we again were both doing our own separate thing, but had our children in common, and we found our relationship again, and we were able to move in together after getting married, and we got an apartment, and we're both excelling and working, and have an apartment, and we're married, and we buy a home in Edmond, and then we get our children back. All worked. We had a foundation of God and going to church, and the community that we built together, and we made things work. She continues to work in the recovery world. I have a fantastic job that's able to support our family in a way that, gives me the opportunity of, being 38 years old, getting sober. I had some catching up, if you will. I was really behind the 8 ball. Didn't have a college degree, didn't finish college. So I work in the automobile industry at a Mercedes-Benz dealership, and been able to provide for my family in a sense that I can give them the things, that I want them to have as children. So we've got 2 boys, 2 girls, 2 we drug through, all the destruction. The other 2, are, a testament of, all the good decisions we did make while we were sober. We managed to do it, and, continuing to have our foundation, our faith in God, and having a place like, Rob's Ranch where we can come back. I come back here once a month, and I get to share my story and hang out with the guys. Such an incredible feeling, because this refills my cup. This keeps me grounded, and again, going through those gates, it's like that feeling, that I get, and it never changes. It's the same every single time. I always get butterflies in my stomach on my way down. Like, what am I going to say to the guys? How am I going to, is there just one little bitty tiny thing I can say that will sink in, that might change the trajectory of their lives? If there's just something I can say, God, please, speak through me, that I can convey that information to them. If you don't figure it out now, then when?